We are live from the press room here in Los Angeles, California. UFC 199 has concluded a few hours ago. My name's Simon Head from Sun Sport. This is Mr. John Morgan of MMA Junkie, America's leading mixed martial arts reporter. Goes to more events than the UFC staff, so no one better to pour over what was a historic night for UK mixed martial arts and a night to remember for mixed martial arts in general. That event, John, was top to bottom one of the greatest events in UFC history.
It really was, and I don't think that's exaggerating. I mean, it's always tough to say something is the best, especially right away because you're kind of on the high of that moment, and it's difficult to say. But, I mean, really, just in thinking back to the catalog of events in my head, this is right up there. I mean, we started out with literally one of the greatest fights you'll ever see.
The very first fight of the night.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be, I don't know what, the best first fight of the night has ever been, but that's got to be up there. Maybe they can put that collection together on Fight Pass, but that was an incredible way to start the night. And then the momentum continued all night long, and then, of course, the big title fights, and then Michael Bisping just shocking the world and delivering on a promise. And, start to finish, incredible night.
We'll obviously talk about Bisping because that's the big story for us over in the UK. This is a guy who, not that long ago, was considered a busted flush. People thought that he would never get this opportunity. He had 3 potential title shots on the line. He lost all 3. Dan Henderson knocked him out at UFC 100. Chael Sonnen beat him, according to the judges at least, in a very, very close fight that a lot of people... Chael Sonnen thought he lost. I maintain he won that fight. We'll agree to differ on that one. And Vitor Belfort, knocked him into next week. So, and after that, it looked as if Bisping was almost, it seemed destined to be one of those guys who he was always going to be there or thereabouts, but never quite going to make that breakthrough. But he was like a man possessed this week through the whole thing, the whole story. I mean, you've followed his career, and you've covered probably every single fight he's had in the UFC. How different was his demeanour this week compared to the other events, based on how you see it? Because obviously I've got my own take on it, but I'd be interested to get yours.
Incredibly different, because I think a lot of times Michael Bisping was a showman. It's funny because I say there's times when you can detect real confidence in a fighter, and there's times you can detect a guy that's trying to talk himself up.
Yep.
And I think Michael Bisping has been that guy that's trying to talk himself up a lot of times over the years. But I think, honestly, the Anderson Silva win did something huge for Michael Bisping. I think for his confidence, for, just the way he feels about himself and the way he feels about his opportunities and his options. I mean, when he was saying, this is my destiny, this is something that's going to happen, it didn't feel like he's just trying to sell a fight. And he's great at selling a fight.
He is.
But it felt like he really meant that. And, God, what a magical year it's been for Michael Bisping so far. This has been a fun ride, because you're right. I mean, Mike is a company guy, somebody that has done everything the UFC has ever asked of him. But you did kind of get the feeling, okay, he reached his limit. It's not like he's some incredibly gifted athlete. You know what I'm saying? He has maximized his potential as a human being.
And he's the first guy to admit that.
Absolutely.
He tells you he's an average guy. He isn't elite at one particular element of MMA. He's just a tough guy with a heart of a lion who just goes out there, lays it all out there. And it hasn't quite happened for him. But he fought Anderson Silva in London in what would have been his dream title fight.
Sure.
That was the fight he was chasing all those years, Anderson Silva in the UK. He got Anderson Silva in the UK. Unfortunately, Silva didn't have the gold back then. That was one of the most dramatic fights.
Oh, amazing.
He was winning the fight handily, then gets knocked down at the end of the 3rd round with a flying knee. There was a bit of controversy in regard that his mouthpiece had fallen out and he was signalling to Herb Dean, you don't do that in a fight.
Protect yourself at all times.
Protect yourselves at all times. And had that happened maybe 10 seconds earlier, that probably would have been a knockout win for Anderson Silva. It happened right on the buzzer. He ended up being saved by the buzzer effectively. He went back to his corner and amazingly came back and won the next round, and that round effectively won in the fight. So that was a landmark win for him. And then the thought after that was, well, he got the win over Anderson Silva, but he wants to win the title. And can we see that? And common wisdom was that he wasn't really going to beat Luke Rockhold.
Right.
Rockhold beat him handily in Sydney 2 years ago. And I wrote about it this morning. There was just that feeling there was something in the air, and that while it's hard, it's hard not to back Rockhold, but it feels like there's a chance that something special could happen tonight. And I was open-mouthed in amazement on press row when it happened, because Michael Bisping, the man who's been almost a figure of fun amongst some fighters for his lack of knockout power. People have said he's got pillow fists and all of this, and he's a volume striker, and he's just a decision fighter. He went and blasted him out with 2 huge left hooks and finished him on the ground. That was as decisive a finish as you'll get. And we've got a new world champion. It's incredible.
It's incredible. You know, I think when Luke... First of all, you could tell this week that even though there was only 2 weeks of build of this fight, Michael Bisping had gotten under Luke Rockhold's skin.
Oh, yeah.
Luke Rockhold was very upset, very shook. And then he comes out at the press conferences and admits that he has a knee injury. And you just start thinking, wait a minute. If Luke has a knee injury and he's so confident that he can beat Mike, you know, maybe this is a fight he shouldn't be taking. He didn't take it seriously, but he believes. You know, so you start to creep and think, well, maybe there is some dots to be connected here. Mike could do something special. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I still went with Luke Rockhold. I went on record and said, look, I think Mike's gonna, be competitive and be focused, but I just don't think he's got the tools to get this done. As you said, a first-round knockout. Come on, nobody was calling that.
We were talking about it in the press room a little bit earlier on with a few of our other colleagues in the press. The general thought process here was, if Michael Bisping was going to win this fight, it would have been by decision.
Right.
Because that is typically the way he wins fights. He wins it with his cardio, which is among the best in the middleweight division. But then you factor in the fact that he came in on a 2-week camp. That possibility becomes a lot smaller. You think you can't possibly go 5 rounds at the pace that he normally fights off a 2-week camp. So you think, well, he's going to need to knock him out. And we haven't really seen that for a very long time. Certainly not as decisive as that. That's the most decisive finish of his UFC career, without a doubt.
It's incredible.
So
he beat up Kung Lee pretty bad.
He beat up Kung Lee, but that was more of a systematic sort of dismantling of him,
true.
And had him against the fence, landed lots of strikes, and then hit him with a good knee up the middle, and then finished him on the floor. This was 2 big left hands. First one floored Rockhold. Rockhold was getting back up, so he floored him with another one. And then when he was against the fence, he hit him with 2 absolute monsters. And then Big John McCarthy stepped in.
Incredible.
And in terms of UFC title fight shocks, where would you rank this, do you think?
It's right up there. It's right up there at the top. I still think, GSP losing to Matt Serra is kind of the one that everybody always points to.
That's the standard, isn't it?
That really is.
Judged on that.
That is. And then, of course, I think in terms of actual betting lines, I think Holly Holm stopping Ronda Rousey was technically the biggest, according to the odds, and that was pretty massive too. Barao Dillashaw was a pretty big upset as well. But this is right up there with the biggest of them. It really is, because I think all week long everybody was kind of giving it the old, well, I'm glad Mike's here. You know what I mean? It's he finally got his title shot.
The old college try and all that. Yeah.
And you know what's funny? I was actually talking to a colleague on Skype as the fight was starting. Mike, when he came in, he went out of his way to greet his family a couple of times.
Yep.
As he walked through the cage, he made an effort of it to really soak in the moment, which is awesome. For 10 years he's been trying to get to this title shot. But even then I'm like, I made the comment to my colleague, I said, he got a lot of that "I'm just happy to be here" body language.
Almost like farewell to soak it all up. This could be the last one.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if that's what I want. But it turns out maybe that's the mental state he did need. He talked a lot about the mentality they need. Jason Perillo, kind of helping him refocus and concentrate on the right things. And even him saying the 2-week training camp. It's funny because when he said the 2-week training camp, leading into this fight was maybe better for him because he has a tendency to overtrain, and this way he wasn't overtrained. And I remember listening to him say that, and he presents it so convincingly. You're like, no, maybe that is good. And then you go, no, it's not good to go into a title fight with Luke Rockhold on 2 weeks' notice.
No, he can sell snow to Eskimos.
He can, but maybe it is. Maybe that is exactly what he needs. Maybe from now on, he just needs to not start training until he's 2 weeks out. But this was special. This was. I said at the time, and I think I told you this. The fight back in London with Anderson Silva, that fight felt like a movie to me. Just the ebb and the flow of it, man. It was like a Hollywood blockbuster, just the type of emotion that was in it. And this right here, this was a storybook ending, too. This is... if this was a movie, you'd be like, come on. The guy that could never knock anyone out comes in and beats the champ in the first round. Yeah, thanks for selling me that load of crap, dude. Gonna be some.
Yeah.
I mean, just incredible.
It was nuts, and in the pre-fight talk, Luke Rockhold had been wound up by Bisping to the point that Rockhold started being very specific about what he was going to do, and he basically said, "I'm going to knock you out, and I'm going to knock you out in 3 minutes." Well, the official time of the knockout for Michael Bisping was 3 minutes 36 seconds.
Whoops.
So it wasn't far off that 3-minute prediction, but it was Michael Bisping delivering the knockout and not Luke Rockhold. Final one on Michael Bisping before we move on to a couple of the other fights on the card. He's in a position now as champion. He can obviously leverage his position and look to maybe not dictate what he does next, but certainly have a major say.
Yeah.
Opposition-wise, obviously, there's options there. The Rockhold rematch is the easiest sell in the world. Jacare Souza is certainly a deserving candidate. So we've got those there. And there's the looming shadow of Yoel Romero once he comes back from his suspension.
Chris Weidman.
And we got Chris Weidman when he gets fit. So and we know that Weidman doesn't like Bisping.
Bisping doesn't like Weidman.
So there's always that. But I think more important for Bisping, and I spoke to him backstage after the fight, he wants to bring the belt back to the UK, and he wants to fight in Manchester. I mean, if you were the UFC, what would you do with Michael Bisping next? Who would you pitch him in with, and where would you stage it?
Well, if I'm the UFC, probably what I would do is I would give him that fight in England, and I'd do it against Jacare. I think Jacare is a legitimate #1 contender, but he's not the greatest sell in the world.
Right.
You know what I mean? In the United States, in a pay-per-view, Bisping versus Jacare, hardcore fight fans would be like, oh, wow, this could be Jacare's chance, but I just don't see that one being a big seller for the casual fan and being like, I want that. So, if you want to combat that, take it to England, where obviously Mike's going to be a huge draw. So, if I was the UFC, I would say that you could take Mike as the big draw, put him against the lesser draw in Jacare, and that would still leave you available to maybe do, say, Weidman and Rockhold in New York as a #1 contender fight, because I'm sure Weidman still wants to fight in New York, and I think it sounds like he'll be healthy around that time. Put the fight together that was supposed to be, make it for a #1 contender fight maybe, because then no matter who wins out of that little foursome right there, you got pretty good matchups. So, I don't know that I'd necessarily say that's the right thing to do. I mean, obviously the trilogy fight would be an easy sell, but if I'm the UFC, that to me seems like the easiest way to do it. That way Weidman gets to fight in New York, Bisping gets to fight in England, and I think the matchups make sense.
Yeah, and you talk about selling a fight, and spoke about it over a cold beer yesterday, and this is a guy who once quit his job as a door-to-door salesman because he was too intimidating at the door. He quit his job in sales. He's one of the biggest salesmen in the UFC, one of the biggest salesmen in the fight game. Obviously, a lot of the new fans to the sport know all about Conor McGregor. Bisping was doing a very similar job at a slightly less, with slightly less press, or a lot less press. He was the guy who did the hard yards. He's the guy who broke the barriers down in order to get people tuned into the sport. Tom Breeze, I spoke to him in Media Day, and he said that if it wasn't for Bisping getting on the Ultimate Fighter and doing what he did and switching people onto the sport, he probably wouldn't have found MMA as early as he did. And he's a 24-year-old fighter in the UFC. Didn't go his way tonight, Tom Breeze. He suffered his first career loss against Sean Strickland in probably the least entertaining fight of the night, it would be fair to say.
It was.
But we had 13 fights on that fight card, and 12 of them were absolute crackers. Let's talk about the co-main.
Let me say one thing real quick on Bisping. I'll say one last thing. The other thing that's great about tonight is I think it definitely seals his place as a future UFC Hall of Famer. I think he was one of those guys that was kind of on the bubble.
Right.
Just because of his tenure and what he's accomplished, I think you would say, hey, he's probably a Hall of Famer, but he never got over the hump. I think tonight sealed the fact that one day he'll be in the UFC Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool.
But that would be just desserts as well for all the work he's done, not just as a fighter, but for the sport outside of the cage as well. It's a huge night for him and his family, and a huge night for UK mixed martial arts. It was a big night for California mixed martial arts as well. We had two former WEC fighters fighting for the UFC bantamweight title in a trilogy fight. These two guys do not get along. Dominic Cruz, the Dominator, and the California kid Uriah Faber going toe-to-toe for the third time. It was the rubber match. They both won a fight each. And Faber, similar to Bisping in some ways, he's on that quest to win a UFC title. He held world championships at WEC before that got absorbed by the UFC. But when that merger happened, he'd lost the belt to Jose Aldo at featherweight. He's now campaigning at bantamweight, and he got well beaten tonight, didn't he?
He did, yeah. I mean, it was a competitive fight. I don't think Uriah Faber looked bad.
Absolutely not.
But Dominic Cruz is just one step above. I mean, really one of the best fighters in the world right now. Dominic won that fight everywhere. He won it on the feet. He dropped Uriah Faber a couple times. The grappling, some of those grappling exchanges were incredibly slick.
The scrambles were going, yeah.
Amazing. Dominic just looked fantastic. I thought he had kind of a slow start. It looked a little bit off to me in the first round.
He looked tired.
He looked tired. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but he just didn't look right. But he came back and just convincingly won it. And again, it's not that Uriah looked terrible. It's just that Dominic was a step above and takes home the victory in this trilogy series, remains the champion, and it looks like they're going to make up, and then they decide they're not going to make up, and they keep going at it. And I'm sure this rivalry is going to keep going. Danny Castillo came up and told me after the fight, he's like, dude, we got a handful of guys that are still coming at Dominic Cruz. Uriah said the same thing. He's like,
Cody
I got a gym
Garbrandt
full of guys.
The main one, right?
Cody Garbrandt being right there at the forefront of it. So I think we're going to continue to see Team Alpha Male versus Dominic Cruz rivalries in the future as well. So I think this bickering will continue on.
They are kind of like an old married couple in many ways. They're sort of kind of bickering and arguing with each other, each one wanting to have the last word. It'd be great to think that in like 10 years' time, when they're both hung the gloves up, they can just be sitting in a bar one day with a couple of cold beers. Thinking, do you remember that press conference? Do you remember that fight? Because these are two guys, they're both fantastic characters for the sport. Dominic Cruz, revolutionary in many ways in terms of his fighting style. He looks very strange in some ways. He's got that kind of languid style. His footwork's outstanding. Faber, much more orthodox in terms of his style. Big puncher, likes to use his wrestling, but he really struggled to lay a hand on Dominic Cruz tonight, and Cruz walks away as a UFC bantamweight champion. And that's a guy who's had a bit of a journey. He was out of the sport for a long time. He had a cruciate knee ligament injury, had the operation to repair it. The body then rejected the cadaver ligament that they put in, so that put him out again, and came back, and it was a long time out. The sport can evolve when you're out for that long,
It did, and yet Dominic Cruz has now become like the patron saint of the injured or whatever. Like everybody looks to him as like,
he really
this guy did it, well, we can do it too. I mean, everybody you talk to is like, Dominic Cruz did it, I can do it. No, I don't believe in cage wrestling. I can come back from injuries.
Yeah, he's ruined that excuse for everyone, hasn't he? He's like, everyone can say, yeah, I needed to blow off the cobwebs. No, Dominic Cruz has demonstrated that cage rust doesn't exist.
Incredible.
But that was a great contest as well, and Faber's entrance in particular is one that always comes across well on the TV, but that will live long in the memory as well. Tupac California Love comes on over the speakers.
Absolutely.
The place went absolutely berserk. We had some incredible fights on that fight card. Max Holloway, Ricardo Lamas was on that main card. Two featherweight guys. Lamas has fought for the title. Holloway hasn't fought for the title. He's the coming man, and we were talking about this earlier. He's had a lot of fights in the UFC, and he's still a baby. He's 24 years of age.
It's amazing.
I say baby in a respectful way. This is a sport for those who are relatively new to mixed martial arts and the young, the nature of the sport. Footballers tend to be on the downslope when they hit their early 30s. In MMA, they're just approaching their peak. So
yeah, you really can't. You kind of think about like that 28 to 33 range or something. Is kind of like your physical prime in mixed martial arts, it seems.
Yeah, and Holloway's the coming man now. He's pushing for that show in Hawaii, but more important than that, he's knocking on the door for a title shot. If you take Conor out of the equation for a second, because he's kind of done that to himself, you've got Frankie Edgar versus Jose Aldo happening at UFC 200 for the interim belt. Next man in line's got to be Max Holloway.
I think Max Holloway sits around for a couple weeks, enjoys himself, and then shows up in Vegas for UFC 200 and finds out who he's going to be fighting for the title. Because with Conor McGregor, of course, the rematch with Nate Diaz was announced tonight. UFC 202, that fight's going to take place at 170 pounds. And, Conor doesn't look like he's interested in going back to the featherweight division. So, we talked about it earlier this week, but I believe what's going to happen is that interim fight between Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar will probably end up crowning an undisputed champion. They'll end up being granted the undisputed title when Conor announces that he's vacating. And if that is the case, there's no question about it. Max Holloway is the deserving #1 contender, and I think he'll get that fight.
And if we were to look at the whole fight card and say who got the biggest roar, what generated the loudest noise, the biggest pop from the crowd, I don't think there's any argument. It was Dan Henderson.
It was.
That was just an absolute crazy, wild brawl with Hector Lombard. Two guys who have fight-ending punch power. And Dan Henderson, how old is Dan Henderson now? He's mid-40s now, isn't he? He's got to be pushing 45.
He's 45. He'll be 46 in August.
That's incredible. And he fought Hector Lombard, who is an absolute tank of a man with incredible punch power, and was in a lot of trouble in that first round. But somehow he survived. He even got hit with an illegal knee.
He did.
Which wasn't spotted by the referee. And that could have ended his night, especially after what he'd already taken. But he made it to the second round, and he produced one of the most memorable finishes I've seen in a fight for a long time, and nearly took the roof off the forum. I mean, he had his whole family there, and the place went nuts.
They really did. It was incredible. It was funny. He had told me earlier in the week he was going to win a fight via high kick. He's like, I have trouble. He said, I have trouble getting my leg up that high, but he's so short, I think I can hit him with a high kick. And sure enough, he hits him with a high kick. What I didn't see live and then watched on the replay was that little back elbow that he followed up afterwards. Was just, I mean, that's what really did the trick. And it was great. You know, it's funny. Dan Henderson was a pretty massive underdog going into this fight. I actually picked him.
It was not 4-1 shot.
It was, yeah. And I actually picked him coming in, and just for some reason, the fight that kept standing out to me was the Shogun rematch, where Shogun was hurting him and lighting him up, and then somehow he came back and pretty much exactly what played out tonight. And it was spectacular applause and reaction by the crowd was just amazing. And Dan Henderson, for the first time, admitting, because he's been asked about retirement for a long time, for the first time admitting, this might be it for me. I haven't decided yet. He basically said all week long if Dana White will give him one of those Cush ambassador jobs.
Which he should.
I think he should too,
Which
man.
He should, I believe.
This guy is definitely an MMA legend. Some people say America's greatest mixed martial artist. And there's certainly an argument for that.
Achievement-wise, that's hard to argue with.
It really is. And, hopefully it happens. But, I mean, there's not like a lot. It's not like there's any fight that, like, we have to see with Dan Henderson. I mean, the guy has done everything, fought everybody, been everywhere. He has nothing left to prove, that's for sure.
There's no championship for him to go for at this point.
Right.
And, I think it might be just a financial thing for him at this stage. So, and you just hope that he doesn't have that decision taken out of his hands. Because we were sat on slightly different parts of press row. You're A-list, you're on the front row. In Europe, I occasionally get the privilege of sitting alongside you. Today, I was a bit behind you. I was row B, I was back to row B, cheap seats. But no, it was great. So I WhatsApped you straight after the knockout, and I said Henderson should retire right now in the middle of the octagon.
It would have been special, man. You know, there's
a great way to finish.
There's been a handful of times where I really felt that, and it's not that you're trying to rush a guy out of the sport, but it would just be the most intense, special moment ever. Big Nog knocking out Brendan Schaub in Brazil was one. I thought, what a great way that would be to go out. Vanderlei Silva beating Brian Stan in Saitama. I thought, man, this would be a great night to hang it up. But, like you said, first of all, financially, who wants to walk away from those big paychecks? And second of all, just, the glory and the competitive side of these athletes. I mean, it's so weird to pick a time to say when, because, if you're victorious, doesn't that prove that you're still capable of doing it? And it's like, yeah, but so it's a tough call to make sometimes.
It really is. And I mean, this is a guy I wrote a story about him quite a while back before he was due to fight Tim Boetsch, and I was concerned at that point because we'd seen him on the wrong end of some big KOs at that point, and Tim Boetsch was a big, strong guy who can bang, and I was concerned that this might be one too much for him, and I said that he needs to be hanging him up. He goes and knocks Tim Boetsch out in 26 seconds and makes me look like a complete idiot. And he's carried on since, and he's won a couple, lost a couple, but the thing is, when you've got that, when you've got that H-bomb, his overhand right, then there's always a chance. But the ironic thing was he won that fight without it. Head kick, reverse elbow, and the exclamation point was very reminiscent of his forearm smash on Michael Bisping. He pretty much repeated the feat again on Hector Lombard. Incredible scenes, amazing win. We should probably wrap this up very soon, but any other abiding memories from this event? It was one for the ages, this one.
Well, that's the thing that's terrible about this is, I mean, everything we've talked about, we haven't talked about how great Dustin Poirier looked. We haven't talked about the incredible knockout from Beneil Dariush. We haven't talked about Jessica Andrade looking like a completely new fighter at 115 pounds. Alex Caceres turning in the best performance of his career. Polo Reyes and Dong Young Kim in that incredible. I mean, this was a great card. There's just so many stories coming out of it, so many epic performances on the night that, I mean, you could talk as long as the fight card was about the fight card because it was fantastic.
It was great. Superb fight. But for us back home in the UK, it was all about one man, Michael the Count Bisping, the new undisputed UFC middleweight champion of the world. That's our coverage all wrapped up here in Los Angeles for UFC 199. Please do check out the Sun website, thesun.co.uk/UFC, for our post-fight reaction and exclusive backstage interview between myself and Michael Bisping. A euphoric Michael Bisping. He wants to defend that belt back in the UK in his next fight, so fingers crossed we get that fight agreed and we get to see him back on British soil, carrying a little bit of extra bling around his waist. Until next time, take care. We'll speak to you soon.